All right, welcome everybody. This is 2.3. We're going to be talking about dividing polynomials. In the past, we've learned how to add and subtract and multiply. Today, we're going to learn how to divide polynomials. So since we're dividing, maybe we should do a quick reminder of how do we divide normal numbers. Okay, so if we're taking 184 and we want to divide that by 5, we could use long division to come up with our answer. Okay, so here this might look familiar. We probably did this in elementary. We'd take this and we'd say, well, how many times does 5 go into 1? Well, it doesn't. So then we go to the next number, we add the next number, we say 18. How many times does 5 go into 18? It goes in 3 times, because 3 times 5 is 15. And then we end up having some leftover amount of 3. Again, we're just subtracting to give us what's left. We then would bring down the next number, and we get a 4. And so we'd say, how many times does 5 go into 34? And we'd say 6, because 6 times 5 is 30. And we subtract, and we end up getting 4. So we end up getting a remainder of 4, or really, if we are doing 184 over 5, right, that's dividing, we basically want to say, what is its mixed fraction? How many times does 5 go in? It goes in 36 times with a remainder of 4/5, right? Okay, so if you just rewrite this as a mixed fraction, it's basically what long division is. So the remainder would be 5, or we could say, 4/5. Okay. And so over here, let's just do a quick reminder on how do we call each of these parts. So what we're trying, like our big number, what we're trying to go into is called your dividend. And then what's going in, the amount that's going into that number is called the divisor. And when I ask you to write your answer in the future, even if it's just long division or when we're dividing polynomials, our answer is going to look something like this. So we would say, we already wrote this down, 36 plus 4/5. Okay, so this is called your quotient. This is your remainder. And this is your divisor. Okay, so how we write this out, again, your answers will look like this. So it will be quotient plus remainder out of divisor. Okay, and we'll do some examples of that in just a minute, sorry. Put a little star on that. All right, so going back again, we've kind of talked about how we've multiplied polynomials, which are kind of similar to dividing polynomials, right? They're like opposites. So if we're multiplying, we just kind of go the opposite direction to divide, okay? So I did an example already. You can look at that, but I'd like you to pause and give number 2 a try, okay? So if we do this, again, we would multiply and we'd get 2x squared times x would give us 2x cubed. And then we can just keep multiplying, so negative 2x squared, negative 1x, 18x squared, negative 18x, and then negative 9. And if you remember, when we do these, we're going to always find things that we can combine like terms. So we can combine the x squareds, we can combine our x's, and that would give us our answer. So we'll have 2x cubed, and then plus 18x squared, minus, sorry, I said that wrong, that's 16, my bad, and then minus 19x, and then minus 9. Okay, so again, when we're dividing, we are pretty much just going the opposite direction. Okay, put in the stuff that we do know and go and find the rest. Okay, so for example, when we multiplied, we had some sort of binomial, and we put that on the side. We still have a binomial, we're going to put that on the side. okay? We do not know what this part is. Sorry, I was supposed to be circling that. We don't know that. That's actually going to be our answer. That's our quotient, okay? But we do know what we want to, we know what our dividend is, right? Okay, so we're going to start by putting that in that first box. Just like when we look here, when we multiplied, we didn't have to combine any like terms, right? So same thing here. We're just going to write down that first term, and we're going to go from there. So think about which of these boxes could we fill in? And if you look carefully, it looks like we could probably come up with this, right? This should be x squared. Those have to multiply with x to give us x cubed. Once you have that done, we should be able to figure out what this box is. Because 1 times x squared will give us 1x squared. That kind of making sense? So here is the part where you have to pay very close attention. Okay, we have 1x squared, but we need it to be negative 4x squared. So if you remember up here when we're multiplying, we end up needing to combine like terms. So we're still going to need to, well, I guess we're not really combining, we're trying to uncombine this, right? So what does this box need to be? It has to be negative 5x squared. Does that make sense? So if we were to combine these, it ends up giving us negative 4x squared. All right, and now we can just repeat what we did before. We should be able to figure out what this is. X times what gives us negative 5x squared? Well, it has to be negative 5x. These two together multiply to give us that box, okay? And then we're going to find the box that's straight down, negative 5x. But wait, we don't want it to be negative 5x. We need these two need to combine to give us negative 1x. So that means we need to add 4x. And then repeat. So x times what gives us 4x? Well, it has to be a positive 4. And then 4 times 1 will give us our last box, which is 4, which matches, okay? So let's write down our answer. We'll have x squared minus 5x plus 4. So this one doesn't have a remainder. If we wanted to put a remainder, it would be right here, because 4 plus 0 does give us 4. So there's no remainder, okay? So this would just be our answer. So what does that mean? If it goes in evenly, we know that it did go in evenly. So what does that mean? So that means that x plus 1 is a factor of our divisor, which is x squared minus 4x, cubed, and then negative 4x minus x plus 4, okay? So basically, why do we care if we have a factor? So something that can go in evenly will end up telling us what our solutions are. If you remember when we factored and we ended up getting like 2 parentheses, we knew that if those are equal to 0, then we would be able to find our 2 solutions. We did that earlier this unit, okay? So we kind of want to know if something is a factor or not. Let's do one more. So again, we're always going to put our divisor on the left, so x minus 3, and then start with your leading term, so x to the third. It's not always x to the third though, so please don't just always put an x to the third. All right, and then we'll just go through this process. So x times what gives us x cubed, so it has to be x squared. Go straight down, negative 3x, but we need the negative 3 to combine with something else to give us negative 4. So we need to subtract 1x. Sorry, that should be a squared. minus 1x squared. Okay, do you see how those combine to give us this? And then we repeat the process. This has to be a negative 1x, because negative 1x times x will give us that box. And then we'll go straight down. We'll get positive 3x. But wait, we don't want 3x, we want negative 1x. So we need to subtract 4x. And that would give us negative 1x. Okay, and then one more try. This has to be a negative 4. Multiply to give us 12. But wait, we don't want it to be 12. We want it to be 4. So the remainder is minus 8. Okay, so again, we want to write our answer as the quotient plus the remainder, and then divide it by the divisor. Okay, so we'll go and write that now. Make sure we can get that. So x squared minus 1x minus 4, and then we're going to add our remainder over our divisor. Okay, kind of got that off a little bit. You can also, if you wanted to do, you could do a negative here, and then just have an 8 on the top. Okay, you could do 8 or negative 8 over x minus 3. That would still be fine. Okay. All right. So what does that mean? Did it go in evenly? No, it did not. So what does that mean about the divisor? It means that x minus 3 is not a factor of our divisor, or sorry, our dividend, this thing. Okay. All right, so we're going to skip a couple of these. I'll skip A and B. There's a couple that we really do need to talk about. Okay, so first off, again, this is kind of how we write it, quotient plus remainder over divisor. Make sure we get that every time. One thing is if, and I think I mentioned that already up here, if there is no remainder, then you do not need to, please do not, save yourself some time, do not go like this. Okay, you don't need to add nothing to it. Okay, all right, so let's do a couple things real quick. One thing that's very important is you need to make sure you fill in any missing terms. So if you look at this, we've got x squared minus 4. The x term is missing, so we have to put in a 0x. Okay, we do not need to put any terms that are in front. We don't need to add a 0x to the third. You don't have to do that. Okay, so just start with the highest exponent and work your way down. Put in any zeros as needed. Okay, we'll do an example of that right here. So which term is missing? Well, the term that's missing is right here. It should be a plus 0x. I'd encourage you, sorry, my voice seems a little dry. I encourage you to write it out. Okay, so that's our new equation, and we want to divide it by x plus 2. Okay, so we'll maybe draw ourselves a little box. Oops, sorry. A little hint is whatever the degree is. So if the degree is 3, you're going to do a 2 by 3. If it's a degree of 4, we'll do a 2 by 4. If it's a degree of 2, we'll do a 2 by 2. Okay? So here we'll put again our divisor on the side, so x plus 2, and then our leading term will go in the first box, so 3x cubed. As long as you get that 0x, it'll pretty much just take care of everything else that you need. So let's start at the top. This has to be a 3x squared, and then we multiply down to give us 6x squared, but wait, we don't want 6x squared, we want negative 1. So we have to subtract 7x squared and repeat. So this has to be negative 7x, so that if we multiply it by x, it would give us that box, work our way down, negative 14x, but wait, we need it to be 0x, so we'll need to add 14x. Those would cancel out to give us 0. And then this has to be plus 14, so that when it multiplies by x, it'll give us 14x. And then we'll go straight down. It looks like we would get 28. But wait, we don't want 28, we want 11. So we have to subtract 17. And again, that's your remainder. Okay, so you're always going to end up finishing up with two, like in our box, our two constants. One may be a 0, the remainder might be 0. Okay, and then we just need to write down our answer. So 3x squared minus 7x plus 14 minus 17 over our divisor, which is x plus 2. Okay. All right, so watch out for missing terms. All right, here's another example. This is where we have a quadratic instead of a cubic, meaning our degree is 2. So that means our box is going to be a 2 by 2 box. Okay, and if you ever do too many boxes or not enough, you can always erase them or add more boxes if you need to. Okay, so here we've got 2x minus 1, and our leading term is 8x squared. And again, look down, we've got our 2, and then a 1, and then our constant. So it means we have no missing terms, so that's good. All right, so then we will find our first term above. So this has to be 4x. Go straight down. This has got to be negative 4x. But we need it to be 10. So we've got to add 14x. And then up above, this has to be 7. Because 7 times 2x will give us 14x. And then our next box would be negative 7. And that's what we want, so that means that the remainder is 0. So our answer here, again, we don't ever need to write down the remainder. It's just going to be 4x plus 7. All right, so again, here something else that we didn't mention before is that we have a coefficient in front of your x. Doesn't really make any difference. You're still just multiplying, okay? All right. Let's go down, let's look at E. So again, always check and see if we're missing a term. What term is missing here? It's got to be our like plus 0x squared. Okay, so if we want to rewrite it out, that might be helpful. Okay, put in the stuff in the box and your divisor on the right side. And then we'll just go through that, okay? So this has to be 2x squared. Go straight down, negative 2x squared. But wait, we don't want it to be negative 2x. We want it to be 0x squared. So we've got to add 2x squared. Again, those two combined give us 0. And then we'll just repeat. So this has to be plus 2x. Go straight down. Negative 2x, but we want it to be negative 5x, so we need to subtract 3x. Those combine to give us the negative 5. And then repeat, minus 3, go straight down, positive 3, but we don't want 3, we want 5. So this has to be plus 2, and that's your remainder. Okay? So hopefully this is kind of making sense. Again, I know it takes a little bit of time until you get a little used to dividing. Okay. All right, F I already have done. If you want to pause and give it a try before you look at it. G is not much different. If you'd like, I'll go over it, but If you feel like you're comfortable, this probably is enough that you need to get through the homework, okay? So again, draw myself a little box. The dividend is a degree of 3, so we'll do a 3 by 2 box. Put the divisor on the side and our leading term inside and go from there. So this has to be 2x squared. Go straight down, 4x squared, but we need it to be 13. So add 9, x squared. And then going straight above, this has to be a 3x. Go straight down, 6x, but we need it to be 9, so we'll add 3x. Go above, this has to be 1, so plus 1. Go down, would get 2, and we do want 2, okay? So that means we have no remainder, and so our answer would just be 2x squared plus 3x plus 1. No remainder, you don't need to write anything about that. Again, that means that our divisor is a factor. It means it can go into that cubic evenly. Okay. This is just a challenge problem if you want to look at it on your notes, and then you could check and see if you got the same thing. But this is not on your homework. This is not on your test. It's just to let you know that you could do any type of polynomials. This one is a cubic divided by a quadratic, and it still works out. It's just a little hairy, but don't want to spend a lot of time on that. It's not on the homework or the test. All right, we will see you later. If you have any questions, stop